Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today I'm set the Chulin daf Chaf Hey. We are going to begin on Chaf Dalad Amud Beis by the new Mishnah. Tahar b'kli cheres, tami b'kol hakelim. So there's something unique about a kli cheres, an earthenware vessel, that it can become tamei, and the way it becomes tamei, other kalim do not. For that matter, Tar b'kli cheres tami b'chol kalim, tar b'chol hakelim tami b'kli cheres. So there's certain ways that a kli cheres will remain tahar, and in that same way, other kalim become tamei, and vice versa. Says the Gemara, Tana Rabbanan. So avir kli cheres, when it comes to a kli cheres, the avir, the airspace inside of that cup, inside that vessel, tamei. So it will become tamei if there's something in it, even if it's not necessarily going to be seen even touching, but as long as it goes inside the airspace of a kli cheres, it's tamei. The gabo tahar, but the back of the kli, or for example the outer surface, is tahar. However, avir kol kalim tahar, when it comes to other kalim, if you put your finger, say your tummy, you put inside without touching the kli, so it doesn't do anything. The gabon tummy. However, the outside of someone's tummy touches the outside of any other kli other than kli cheres, will make it tummy. So nimsa tar b'kli cheres tummy b'kol kalim. Tar b'kol kalim tummy b'kli cheres. This is the same design all the other mishnayos have been having. So the pasuk says toichai, or as you can look at Rashi, the whole kli cheres asher yipol mehem. So this is specifically talking about an earthenware vessel, a kli cheres, and it says tocho, inside. Not just mashma b'shul naga. Even if you didn't touch the airspace inside, still it'll make the kli cheres tamei. So maybe it's only if you actually touched it. What do you mean, even if you didn't touch this? Rabbi Yonasan ben Tulmo Saimer, never teichel tamei, but never teichel litame. So it says tocho, both by being the receiver of tuma and also the giver of tuma. So ma teichel ha'amr litame. Just like when it says tamar, the word toichai, referring to tamei, the kli making other things tamei, av b'shul naga, even if it doesn't touch it. So av toich, which means that it can make other things tamei. So let's say the kli is already tamei, and it's filled with a whole bunch of like little mustard seeds. So even though those mustard seeds are not actually touching the ones in the middle, there's thousands of them in a cup, they're not all touching, but it doesn't matter. It still becomes tamei. So avteichel hammer with tamei, also the kli becoming tamei, avu b'shul naga. So if someone's tummy puts his finger inside the kli, even though he doesn't touch it, nonetheless it'll still make it tamei. So it works in both directions. Avu b'shul naga. So how do we know over there? So Rabbi Yonasan hatayru ha'ida al kli cheres. The Torah testifies regarding this earthenware vessel as we continue to Chaf Hey Amud Aleph. V'afilu moli chardal. That even though, as I said, even it's filled with a bunch of mustard seeds, says Rashi, shekli enu naiga b'kulo. It's not touching all of the mustard seeds. They're so small and there's so many of them. Only the things which are touching on the walls. The things which are middle, nonetheless, are metamin min avir. It still becomes tummy from the sides. V'od, says Rashi, ein oichel matami oichel. So he says, v'iyate yochel leimer shezeh matami hazeh shari ein kebetze b'chol echad. So you can't say, well, maybe one mustard seed is matame the other one. No, that's not how it became tamei, because it's too small. Also, an oichel cannot be matame another oichel. A kli, which is a rishon l'tuma, can make oichel and umashkin, which to a sheni l'tuma, but oichel cannot be matame an oichel. But furthermore, says Rashi, im kain zeh sheni v'zeh shlishi, v'shlishi yas revi, l'tame esem soim. Okay. Maybe a kli cheres should become tame from the outside as well. Because ma kol kelim shein metamin ma'aviron. When it comes to any other type of a kli, it doesn't become tummy inside by the airspace, metamin megabon, but just touching the outside does. So kli cheresh metamin ma'aviroi edodin she'etamin megaboy. So it's the same kavachimers that we've been having in the previous dafim about the same things. That l'chayr you should maybe say that kli cheresh is also metamin on the outside. So Amar the whole kli pasuach asher ein simib silav. So this is in Parshas Chukas, right after the din of Paraduma. It says any kli which is open, a kli patuach, but it's ein simib basil. It's not tightly fastened, closed. So ez a kli shitumaso kodemis lepischai, that the tuma comes before it's opened. Havi omer ze kli cheres, which means that even if you're not touching it, it still can become tame. V'chi ein simib basil love hu the tame. Because there's no simib seal on it. That's why it cannot become tame, because you're not going to make it tame from the outside. Hayesh simib sil love tar, because again, the fact that it's closed up, even though a person's touching it, doesn't matter. It's not going to be a problem, says Rashi. Kli patuach midikopid apis apticha. It's so concerned that it being opened or closed. Shema mino b'kli cheres koi. It has to be talking about a kli cheres, because on any other kli, it's open or closed. Even if it's completely closed, but if you touch the outside and your tummy, you'll make it tame. So why does it matter if it's closed, that it could be tahar? Because it can't become tummy this way. It can only become tummy ba'avira, inside. And therefore that's a raya that the only way that it can become tummy is that way, but not from the outside. Okay. And for that reason, you can say the other way around. Maybe other kalim should also become tummy from the inside. From kavachimer. Kli cheres is not matami on the outside, but it is on the airspace inside. So So when it comes to all other kalim, which does become tummy on the outside, should be tummy by the airspace inside too. One sec, can't be, because it says the word taichai. And what do we see from the word taichai? Taichel shel zeh, v'lo taichel shel acher. The din of being matama ba'aviroi inside is specific to this, to a kli cheres, not any other keli. So that's what the word taicho comes to teach. V'hani taicho darshinhu. This word taicho, I thought we already made a drasha on the previous Amud. It says tachel atame v'nemer taichel atame. So we made a gzer shava that just like if a kli cheres is tame, it could be matama the seeds, the mustard seeds, even though it's not touching. So too it could become tame, the kli itself, even if the person who was tame did not touch it, but they just put their finger inside. So we already learned gzer shava from the words taiche. So how can you learn out taiche to say taiche shel zev or taiche shel acher? The answer is it's not a problem, because there's not just one tocho, but the truth is you only need two, but there's actually four. Arba taicho ksivi. Taichai, taich, taicho, taich. Because it could say the word taich, but instead they say tocho, so that's like a second. And it says toch twice, or tocho twice, so it's four. So chad gufa. One is just the pasuk, pashib shad, the pasuk. But chad gzer shava, that we said that even if it's not touching either way. Chad taicha shel zevel or taicha shel acher. That kli cheres is matama avir, but not any other kli. And v'chad, here's the fourth one, which we haven't had yet. Taicha v'lo taich taicho. V'afilu kli shotov. So, says Rashi, let's look. So chad gufa. Taich ha'amar l'tame l'gufasa shi'atama hakli kol oichon amashkin shabaviro. Just saying that it can be matama all food and drink inside in the airspace, even though it didn't touch. One is the gzer shava. Li'moid al kli shikabel tuma min ha'avir gava mishol naga ba'asheretz. That goes both ways. The third one is it only applies to kli cheres and not any other kalim. And the fourth one is v'lo toich toichel. Look at Rashi. Im hoye kli munach b'toich kli cheres. Let's say you have a regular kli that you put it inside. Let's say this is a kli cheres. Inside this kli, you have a kli within another kli. So, in that situation, says Rashi, upi hapanimi lamala, and the inner one is the face is up, mipia chitzain from the outer, from the face of the outer kli. You have food and drink inside the inner kli. Now the inner kli is a regular kli, and which is only matama on the outside, not on the inside. But tuma ba'avir hachitzain. So the question is, it should become tummy from the avir of the outside kli, which is the kli cheres. So ein ha'oichin tamein dolav toichai the kli cheres ninhu el toichai. You have fully kli cheres matzel, shot of matzel. So the point is that even though it's inside this kli avir, so you would think that maybe whatever's inside the kli within a kli should become tameh. The answer is no. It's only when it comes to the outside, but not the inside when it comes to a regular kli, even though it's inside a kli cheres. So it's teichavo teich teichai. That's the drasha. Okay, let's finish to the Mishnah. V'lo teich teichav yafil kli shotaf. V'lo yihi kol kelim matamin megabon el matoichan. We shouldn't say that all kelim should become tummy on the outside. Only matoichan from inside of an igia and touching mekabachaymer. Makli cheres shematama mavir and matama megaboy. It's not matami on the outside. So kol kelim regular kelim shein matama maviran. It's not tummy on the inside. And it didn't shein matama megabon. Maybe it should not be matami on the outside either. So Amar Krav v'chol kli psuach asher ein simil psil olav tamihu. Tamihu. Only when it comes to kli cheres do we say that there's a distinction of it being open or closed, and that when it's in open and you're inside the kli, then it's tameh. But if it's closed, the outside, you're safe. That's only because it's a kli cheres. So that who is telling you only by kli cheres are you safe from toma, because from the outside. However, any other kalim that you're touching from the outside, then it would be tameh. So hi who the chi ein simib sil of tameh. So what is the who? Is that if it's not closed, it's tameh. Ha yesh simib sil of tar. If it's closed, it is tar. Ha kol kalim. When it comes to all other vessels, ben sheish simib sil lehen, ben she'en simib sil lehen, metalman. It doesn't matter if it's closed. The lid is closed, because you can still touch it on the outside. Never have you touched on the outside, whether there's a lid or not. That doesn't make any difference, because you're still touching the outside. When it comes to kol kalim, it becomes tummy that way. Question 12. Arba toichai ksiv lamai tzrichi. So one is lagufa, that kli cheres is matama oichan umashkin inside, even though it's not touching. One is the gzer shava, that not only can it be a kli cheres, which is tummy, can be make other things tummy, but things can make the kli cheres tummy in the inside. One is to say it's excluding other kalim from derech avir, and one is teicha v'lo teich teicha, as we explained already. Okay, that was question 12. All right, let's keep on moving. Let's look at question TA 23. Nope. Didn't do that one yet. TB 26. No. Okay, so let's keep on going. Let's now see the next Mishnah. So the Mishnah says as follows: Tar b'kli eitz, tamei b'kli matches. Tar b'kli matches, tamei b'kli eitz. So, when it comes to a kli eitz, there are certain things that, even though it comes in contact with something, it remains tahar. However, with the same situation, if it's a metal kli, a kli matches, it'll become tamei, and vice versa. Tahar b'kli matches, tamei b'kli eitz. So, what is that? So the Gemara explains like this: Tanabana. Gulme kli eitz tamein. If you have a kli which is made out of wood, but it's not completed, it's an unfinished vessel, we don't care. It's still going to become tamei. However, pishutehen tahirin. When it comes to what's called pshute kli eitz, if you have a kli which is flat and it's made out of wood, so we say that it's not makabel toma. However, the opposite is true when it comes to the kli matches. Gulmi kli matches tahirin. The only time a metal kli is considered tamei is if it's a gamar keli, if it's completed. If they haven't completed finishing, the last touches, whatever it is, so then it is considered to be tar. However, pishutehen tamein, even though it's flat, it doesn't have a base kibble, nonetheless it's still tamei. Says Rashi, pishutehen tamein, im nigmra kol malachtan, just as assuming that this piece of metal which is finished, all the malach is done, the kli manchis lo iskash l'sak. We don't compare it to sak, as the Gemara is going to elaborate in a moment. Okay, so nimsa tar b'kli eitz tamei b'kli manchis, tar b'kli manchis tamei b'kli eitz. Okay, now the ve'elahin gulmi kli eitz. So the question is, what does it mean that it's not entirely finished by kli eitz, but nonetheless it's still matama? So kli she'asid l'shoif l'shavetz. So let's say you have a kli that in the future you're going to smooth it off, or shavetz you are going to put some studs into it. It says Rashi, zalogim katanim, like these little bells, or legarer, that you are going to scrape or smooth, lekarkav, or carve it out, latiach betoinus, that you're going to smooth it with some type of fish skin. Rashi says, Dag hu kamay shishninu, in the Elotrepus, we'll see what that means. Anyway, so these are all different ways to complete the process that hasn't happened yet. Mechusar kain, it's missing the base of the stand, or oigen, or its rim, or oizen, or its handle. So in all these situations, we say it's tamei when it comes to kli eitz. However, when it comes, if it's mechusar chatita, if it's missing chatita, which it's not carved out yet, then tar. Mechusar ketita pshita, if it's missing, if it hasn't even been carved out, that seems pretty obvious that it should be tar, because it's not a kli yet. L'tzricha dechak kefiza bekava. Says Rashi, kli she bedaito lachoik. You have a kli which you are intending to carve out, ad shiaksa kaba. Only that you're going to you carved it partially. Choked bo gimel you carved out 3 measures. That'll be shiroyel malacha. It's fit to use. Hoyel l'shem kav hiskuboy. Your intention was really for it to be more. L'daito lashlimo lo havi gomer malacha. So even though you did maybe carve it out, but since you didn't carve it out to the amount that your intention was for, so in that situation, it's still going to be, the chiddush is, it'll be tahar in that case. Dacha kviza bekaba. Ve'elhin gumi kli matches. These are examples of the kli matches, this metal kli which hasn't been completed, in which it will be tahar. Kol she'asid l'shoif l'shavetz, as we said, any kli matches in which you're going to, in the future, planning on smoothing it out, or putting some type of studs in it, as we said, legar to scrape it or to smooth it, lekarchar, to smooth like the gold, lahakish bikornis, bechusar kain, it's missing a base, or oizen, or the rim, or oizen, or the handle, tahar. Bechusar kisui tamei. If it's just missing a covering, it's tamei, because that doesn't really take away from the kli. Right? You can have a covering, but even if you don't have a covering, it's still a kli, and that was not considered to be mechusar malacha. So, Maishna Hani. Why? What's the difference between these and these? So, Rabbi Yochanan Omer, so that's why. The question is, why do we make a distinction between a kli manchas, that it's not tamei, even though, because it hasn't been gemar malacha, but when it comes to a kli eitz, it's still tamei. So we have 2 answers. Rabbi Yochanan Omer hoyel l'kavod asuyin, because a kli manchas, it's made for it to be in an honorable manner. Says Rashi, Hanoch de mateches, these metal ones, Hilkach lo chashivi kli, it's not considered to be a vessel l'milsaihu, for its purpose, and shetigmer komolechas kibudan, unless all of its honor is done. So in other words, a kli manchas is more of an honorable kli. So therefore, it's only considered to be an honorable kli once it's completed. But if it hasn't been completed yet, it's not a kli. Mashenki, when it comes to kli eitz, wood is not as choshev as kli manchas. So therefore, because of that, even if it's not completed, it's already considered like a kli. It already has a utility. That's answer number 1. Rav Nachman Omer hoyel v'demem yikarim, because they are expensive. Says Rashi, "V'ad diavidi l'noi lo chazul musaihu l'macher b'yoker karoy." So you want to sell it for a nice price, but you're only going to be able to sell it for a nice price after it's completed. So therefore, you're not going to want to assume that this kli matchas is completed, has any utility as a kli until it's finished. So my binayu kli etzem of bone, says Rashi. They may be karim that they are expensive to sell, but they're not used for honors. Therefore, that would be the two ways of looking at it. He says it has the same din as a kli matchas, which means that until it's finished, it's not tameh. The kli etzem mekabli tuma. So that's in general is mashma that it could become tameh. Yeah, and that's true. The san Rabbi Shmuel ben Usha Rabbi Yochanan ben Broikaimer. Matam when does the pasuk say v'chol masi izim tischatu? It says that the ma'isa izim of the goats tischatu. So lahavi davar habam and izim. It's coming to include even things that come from goats, which includes min harkarnayim, the horns, min hatalafim, and the hooves. Shar behema v'chayim, the rest of the animal. And the chai, how do we know? Talmud Leimer v'choil masa. Any. It says v'choil. So im kein ma Talmud Leimer izim. So why does it say goats? Pradlo oifais. It's coming to exclude birds. Says Rashi. Kigoyin would see prine for their claws. Shaisim mehem kalim to make kalim of them. So the dinim don't apply. So this, when it comes to kli etzem, has the same din as kli matchas. At least according to this man de Eimer, that's daf when it comes to behema, not by an oif. Okay, let's look at a couple of questions. Let's continue with question 13. So what are the difference? So when it comes to kli matchas, if it's not completed, it's tahar. However, going kli eitz is tameh. Pshuti kli eitz is tameh. However, pshuti kli matchas, pshuti kli eitz, they wrote it wrong. Pshuti kli eitz ein matamen, and pshuti kli matchas is tamein. Okay, so that's the difference. That's question 13. Question 14. So we mentioned if it's not completed, is it considered to be tameh like a kli eitz is still tameh, or is it tar like a kli matchas? So it's totally in whether or not the reason why, if it's a kli matchas is not tameh when it's not completed, if it's because of kavod. So there's no kavod in these types of bones. However, it's because you're selling it for a lot, expensive, so then it is kli matchas. So kli etzem is also sold for a lot. Okay. Question TA 23. So what's the answer for that? So we just had this on Chav Hey Beis. I wrote Mishum Kvoidan or Mimneshem Yikarim. They're expensive to sell. Kli etzem Hem Yikarim of a low Devarim Chashuvim. Okay, that's correct. And that's it. Okay, we have one more. Let's just see this next Mishnah. So, says the Mishnah, Hachayev b'shkedim hamachim pater b'mutukim. Hachayev b'mutukim pater b'machim. So you have shkedim, almonds. So the question is, are you going to be chayev or pater in meiser? So when it comes to, it depends. Sometimes if they're bitter ones, they're pater. At the same time, the sweet ones, almonds, would be chayev, and vice versa. Says Rashi, "B'meiser shedarken l'achlam b'katnum kodim shehimachim." So it's possible. It depends if it's big or small. That's what I was going to say now. So Tanaban, shkedim hamachim. When it comes to bitter almonds, katanim, when they're small, they're edible, and therefore chayavim. That's the reason why you're chayav, because it's considered to be already at that place that because people eat it. However, gedolim paturin. However, when they already grown, they're big, so then they're pater because people don't eat them. They only eat them before they really get really inedible and too bitter. However, before that time, they're small, they're edible, and therefore you're chayiv meiser. However, when it comes to metukim, gedom chayim katanim paturin. So when it comes to sweet ones, you're chayiv because it's completed. However, they're small, people don't eat them, so therefore you're pater. Shmuel ben Rav Yossi, I remember Mishum Aviv, he said the name of his father, Zevazel Lifter, that in both cases it's pater. And so Machlokas Rashi and Taisus. Let's look at Rashi though. So Ketanim, why are you paturin? He says you're always pater. Bein Mahim, bein Matukim. Doesn't make any difference if they're small. It's always pater. That's how Rashi learns it. Says Rashi that when it comes to gedolim, bein mahim, bein matukim, big or small, they're always able to be eaten. And the Gemara is going to ask, if they're big but they're bitter, they should really not be edible. So then why would you ever be chayiv? The Gemara is going to end off with an answer, and we'll get to that in a second. So in all of them, they're pater. Namely, zevazem means either type of almond, bitter or sweet. As they're small, you are pater. Okay, that's what it means. The one who says that when they're big, the obviously sweet ones is fine. It's Gemara. It's not a chiddush for that, but sweet, bitter ones, gedolim, which are when they're big and they're bitter. So it's true. Right now they're not edible, but if you heat them up, you cook them up and warm them up, so then all of a sudden they become edible, and therefore that's the reason why you are chayiv. TB 26. We're going to stop there. TB 26. Elu shkedim ukuliyam chavin b'maiser, v'elu ukuliyam paturin. So shkedim shehem metukim, and I would say gedolim, right? Are chayiv because it's gemar peri. Okay, so that's chayiv l'kuli alma. And what would be pater l'kuli alma? Shkeit. This is a little bit tricky. Shkedim katanim, which are bitter, which are marim, are pater. Shkedim katanim are marim. That's not true. Shkedim marim is the only time maybe. Shkedim, I would say shkedim gedolim. One second. Ben zelzev gedolim, ben marim, ben matukin. You could be chayiv. So that's not either. Shkedim, small shkedim. Definitely, someone says you're chayiv. So the answer's got to be shkedim matukim, which are katanim, right? Then it's pater. That's what it is. Shkedim matukim katanim is pater l'kuli alma, because they're small, no one eats them. However, once they're big, everyone holds you to eat them. The whole machlokas is when it comes to bitter ones. By bitter ones, maybe when they're big, it's a machlokas. Maybe you definitely think you should be pater because they're inedible. Well, maybe not, because you could roast them or whatever. When they're small, so some say that you could eat them because people eat them before. However, this other sheet that says zevzel lifter, not everyone holds. So one says you're pater, but if they're small marim. You have to think about this a little bit. It's a great question. Like, it's making my head spin. Okay. Anyway, that was question TB 26. Think about it. Adkan.